What if the most dangerous moment isn't when missiles launch, but when everyone thinks the other side is bluffing? 2 carrier strike groups, a 1-month deadline, Iran saying nuclear only, Washington saying zero enrichment, Israel saying existential threat, and March 1st sitting there like a fuse. Here's the problem. In international crises, wars don't usually start because leaders want them. They start when leaders miscalculate each other's thresholds. Tonight isn't about predicting war, it's about understanding pressure points and how diplomatic language can mark strategic red lines. Because sometimes the real escalation isn't loud, it's procedural. Welcome to Threat and Theory, where intelligence meets insight. Hosted by a veteran of the U.S. intelligence community, we cut past the headlines to show you the world as it actually unfolds. A place where threats are examined before they're obvious, and theory is used to understand what pressure, power, and intent are really doing beneath the surface. Every episode breaks down complex geopolitics, tradecraft, hidden dynamics, emerging technologies, and the human element behind global events. It's like learning chess for the geopolitical world of today. Discover how intelligence actually shapes the world, not through secrets, but through clarity. You're listening to Threat and Theory. Let's begin. So, Howard, what is happening here as the clock runs towards March 1st?
So, first of all, we need to back off a little bit. This isn't a morality play, and the media really tends to kind of portray these moments within the context of good and evil, and, what we're witnessing is really a clash of visions regarding fundamental national interests, such as deterrence, legitimacy, and even regime survival. So today, what I hope that we'll discuss is how to decode kind of the diplomatic dance that's occurring between the United States, Iran, and even Israel and the Gulf states as we move forward into what really is going to be a crucial next few days.
So let's start with Iran. Publicly, they say we'll negotiate nuclear only, no missiles, no proxies, no internal matters, and zero enrichment.
Right, and that position makes sense from their internal perspective. Enrichment isn't just technical capacity. For them, it's sovereignty and it's insurance. And missiles, well, missiles are now their primary deterrent. With their proxy states rolled up, with the ring of fire, which was surrounding Israel, which included a robust Hezbollah, Assad's Syria, with the Houthis down in Yemen, all encircling Israel, with Hamas, all pointing at Israel, the missiles were not as strategic. Now, all of those are either greatly diminished in capacity or gone. And so the missiles take on a heightened importance.
Yeah.
The missile force carries more weight than ever.
So when they say missiles are off the table, they're not bluffing.
From their perspective, no. But the challenge is, for Israel, the missiles are existential. One thing that was made clear by the 12-day war is that missile defense has its limits. Israel, I think, intercepted about 85 to 87% of all missiles shot. Well, that's cool, but that means that 13% of the missiles got through and hit things like apartment blocks, hospitals, Air Force bases. And that's real damage when you're shooting a few hundred missiles.
Yeah.
And if Iran's promising to shoot more than that, that becomes a big deal in Israel. And Iran is promising to shoot more than that.
Yeah.
And so Israel's saying, okay, this is their only threat, but it's pretty severe from our perspective, and it's aimed right at our civilian population.
Yeah. So the U.S. position is very maximalist, right? It's zero enrichment. It's ship 60% out, possibly to Russia.
Yeah, the 60% is the 60% enriched uranium.
Yeah.
So one of the things we found out as the 12-day war ended last June was that Iran had already enriched some of their uranium to 60%.
Okay.
And that survived the war. That 60% is on the threshold of nuclear capable or nuclear weapon capable. It's not quite there yet, but it's really close, and it's just days away from getting there. It's kind of the next step up or the next step down. And so President Trump's under a couple constraints. One is functional. When he says 60% ship it all out, don't have any in Iran, and he says zero enrichment, those are two different things. One is the 60%, we don't want it in Iran. That's the existing stockpile.
Yeah.
And then the zero enrichment is a different thing. The zero enrichment is basically saying we don't trust you anymore. You already said you were going to enrich to 5% under the joint JCPOA agreement under President Obama, and you've gone up to 60%. And so we're not, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
And so President Trump campaigned against that and said JCPOA is a bad deal. He's actually campaigned on it twice. And so for him to agree to basically a JCPOA 2.0 would be, politically devastating for him.
Yeah. So if we're looking at this as the new plan of attack is we want zero enrichment, we're already at a really high starting point.
That's right. And the challenge here is, does Iran think that it has any leverage?
Yeah.
And it almost seems like they're coming into these negotiations believing that they do. And,
Okay.
And I don't know that they do.
Yeah. So if I've got uranium enriched to 60%, how long does it take me to get that to a state that is considered weaponized?
I'm not a nuclear expert.
Yep.
But I'm told it's within a matter of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. If
So the hard part is getting it to the 60. It's easy to activate it past that into something that is considerably more dangerous.
you're the next step below.
Yeah, I see. So do they store it at the 60% because that's a safe place and they know we can weaponize this quickly if we need to, or why not keep it at the 5% initially?
Well, again, I'm not a
Yeah.
weapons expert, and so I'm not going to try to answer that. 60% is obviously much higher than they need for civilian purposes.
Yeah.
They brought it up to 60%, which is just below weapons grade.
Yeah.
And I don't, I'm not going to try.
There's
to
no other
understand.
reason that you would do that unless you were considering weaponizing this.
That is the best of my understanding.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. So the deadline is March 1st, right? It's been moved up from March 12th. This is not random.
Right. It was originally, I think, on February 12th, President Trump said you have a month. But then the way that the last negotiations went, which were in Geneva at the Omani embassy, said, we'll give you one more round. And then apparently the last negotiations did not go well. Iran was very unwilling to move. The United States is very maximalist in our demands. Basically, Trump is not asking for JCPOA 2.0.
Okay.
The missiles remain on the table as far as the U.S. negotiating position. No enrichment is a U.S. red line. And quite honestly, it's going to be tough. In the meantime, the Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is on station. And the Ford Carrier Strike Group is in the Western Mediterranean and closing quickly on the Eastern Mediterranean. Once it closes off the coast of Israel, and it could operate off of there, it could continue through the Suez Canal and continue and take on station next to the Lincoln Strike Group. But I think I have heard that it's going to remain in the eastern Mediterranean off the coast of Israel, at which point they could still fly missions over Iran with tanking support, and they can also hold pressure onto Hezbollah in Lebanon, helping to protect Israel there, as well as providing missile support for Israel from using their cruisers there. So it's a strategic call by keeping them in the eastern Mediterranean.
Yeah. I was looking at a visual of all of these different assets that were kind of moving into position. And, we talk about, this show is kind of like learning chess for the geopolitical world of today. And I couldn't help but find the similarities between looking at this overview and feeling like, oh my gosh, this is chess pieces moving into position, right? So you talk about, rather than have these two carriers next to each other, it potentially, you're going to keep them separated because strategically it probably makes them a stronger force.
That's right. It gives you more coverage and over a larger area. The other thing I've noticed is I think I saw where 6 E3 AWACS flew into Ceuta Bay, Crete yesterday.
What is an E3 AWAC?
That is our airborne early warning system. It looks like it has a big dish on top of it. It's like a big it's like a flying radar in the sky. If you have 6 airborne, you could probably fly 2 at a time over Iran.
And they keep them up. You just cycle them, and you're up 24 hours a day at that point.
Yeah, and that way you're detecting anything moving on the ground in the air. And that's useful if you're hunting missile transporter erector launchers. You see anything moving down there that looks like a tail, you shoot over an F-16, an F-15, an F-22. We've brought just a boatload of, well, that's probably not the right term, but just a bunch of aircraft, U.S. Air Force aircraft into theater. We have brought more aircraft in, tanker aircraft, early warning aircraft, ISR aircraft. This is not signaling anymore. This is no kidding, multi-week, military operation package that we've brought into theater. I hope for the Iran's sake that the regime understands that. Otherwise, they have mistaken our intent and our capabilities.
So leading up to another meeting on March 1st, it sounds like some of these non-negotiables have already been communicated. Would you imagine? I mean, there is kind of a strategy amongst or against walking into that, holding those cards to my chest, but I've already laid them out on the table before we even meet. So you understand what I'm talking about before we even meet. Is that so that when they do meet up in person, there is no surprises? We've already told you what we're looking for. We told you what we want. What is your answer? Is that kind of what happens on March 1st?
And that's really kind of what we've laid down. We said these are our expectations. Take it or leave it. And it's really up to the Islamic Republic to decide what they're willing to tolerate, and they're under some stress. And it's not as easy as, well, we'll do whatever it takes to please the Americans. They have their own internal constraints, and the biggest one for them is they've burnt a lot of bridges internally, and by that I mean they have no legitimacy with their public from a moral standpoint. They've basically declared war on their citizenry, right? Their economy is in shambles, so they've lost that credibility with their people. Really, about the only thing they have left is coercion. And who really is their coercive force? It's the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps gains a lot of its legitimacy by its nuclear program and its missile program. That's who runs it. And so if you take that away from the IRGC,
Yeah.
you've basically pissed off your last remaining pillar.
Sure.
And so the regime is in some real trouble there. They can, short term, the easy thing is to bend to the U.S. But then in the longer term, that puts them in a real bind with the IRGC.
Yeah. So us getting all these forces in place prior to the March 1st, does that mean March 1st is kind of a point of synchronization?
Yeah, we should be we should be ready by what's today, the 19th. I think with the 21st, we should be ready to go.
Yeah.
As far as forces in place, from what I understand.
Yeah.
It's real busy right now on those aircraft carriers and in the planning departments.
No one's taking leave
CENTCOM.
right now.
No, this is the time when you start seeing a lot of pizzas ordered at the Pentagon.
Mm. Yeah. So can we talk about Trump? Does he want war?
Now, Trump has never really been the war type, but that's not really the right question. He's certainly shown a willingness to use force. He's authorized decisive operations this term in Venezuela, for instance. He used it with Operation Midnight Hammer. But he has consistently avoided an open-ended ground war, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've never seen him in either term order an Iraqi freedom type of operation. And I still wouldn't expect that. One thing you're not seeing flowing into theater right now is ground forces.
Okay.
You're seeing air and naval forces. You'll see air and naval power, yes. Occupation, no.
Mm-hmm.
You might see some special forces wandering around you probably won't see them, but they might be there.
Might be there. Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect that we'll see large ground forces.
So limited force is plausible. Occupation is not.
That's right.
Yeah.
If let's move forward. Let's look at the possibility of a campaign, and I do think right now we're probably at the point now where military action is more likely than not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much more likely than not.
Yeah.
But if you were to look at our objectives, the core objective would be destruction of their nuclear program.
Mm-hmm.
Secondary objective would be the missiles, although I think they might be hit first. And you're also going to see a lot of command and control, forces hit, just because that's the way we do things in order to blind them before we go in.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third objective, and it might even be unstated, probably will be unstated, would be to set the conditions for regime change.
Yeah.
Not regime change by itself. That's two different things. You cannot change the regime from the air.
Yeah.
But you can set the conditions for that. And it would probably go unstated under the guise of hitting command and control units and so on.
Yep.
But you might see a lot of national and regional IRGC and law enforcement and what they call BASIJ, B-A-S-I-J, forces, headquarters hit. So under the guise of command and control.
Yeah. So let's flip the script here. How does Khamenei see this?
His objective, again, is simple, regime survival.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually the case with anybody in this predicament. But the compromise in the short term, again, may compromise regime survival in the long term. And that comes down to the IRGC. How do you maintain the IRGC prestige if you're going to give up those missiles and that nuclear enrichment capability?
Yeah.
So it's a tough situation he's in.
So this could destabilize him internally?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what we've said before. Once that first bomb drops, things get real unpredictable.
Yeah.
Unpredictable for us, but boy, is it unpredictable for him.
It's the famous Mike Tyson quote, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
You bet. And right now we're the 10,000-pound gorilla, and he's a skinny little guy in the corner.
Mm-hmm. So I've also seen that there's kind of been a regime change rhetoric. It's not just the U.S. anymore. It's also parts of Europe and Canada.
Yeah, and that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, who would have ever thought Canada would be calling for regime change?
Yeah.
And certainly Europe. Europe has always been kind of the hedge.
Mm.
They've always been far more willing to trade with Iran. They've had a much more transactional relationship with Iran. Iran never held their embassy hostage. So it's they don't have quite the history that we do. But now the IRGC has been declared a terrorist organization by the EU, which is huge. That's all 23 EU foreign ministers unanimously declaring the IRGC a terrorist organization. That's a big deal. That said, rhetoric is not policy.
Yeah.
There's a difference between pursuing regime change and creating conditions that might destabilize a regime. So Europe has not, for instance, made any noise about joining a coalition with the United States. So we're not seeing French aircraft flying to theater. We're not seeing German aircraft. This is not a coalition of the willing. What we're not seeing, however, is they're not denying us overflight rights as we fly into theater either. So there's clearly impatience. Interesting thing that happened last weekend. Reza Pahlavi, who is the Shah of Iran's son, called for protests worldwide. 250,000 protesters marched in Munich on the margins of this Munich Security Conference. That's 250,000 people.
Yeah.
In Toronto, 350,000 people marched in February.
Yeah.
And this replicated itself in Milan, in Los Angeles, in Berlin. All over the world, people marched on behalf of the people who were massacred and for regime change.
Yeah.
That makes a difference if you're a European politician. It gives you permission to talk about regime change.
Yeah.
That Overton window of discussion has now shifted to where it's no longer forbidden to suggest that Khamenei should be gone.
Sure. So rhetoric at least raises temperatures.
That's right. And as we move towards the conclusion of the diplomatic cycle, it's going to be really interesting to watch how that rhetoric shifts in Europe, whether it shifts towards a more belligerent attitudes against Iran.
Yeah. What about Russia? Russia's muted here?
Russia's somewhat muted, yeah. They, by their standards, yes. Now, of course, they're very involved with Ukraine, which occupies a little bit of their army.
Sure.
And so they're limited what they can do. Now, they just sent a corvette down to the Strait of Hormuz and is conducting a small exercise with the Iranian Navy in the Strait of Hormuz.
What color is the Corvette?
Yeah, it's just a gray one.
Oh, okay.
It's not a little red Corvette.
Okay.
I get where you're coming from. But it's, a Corvette's like a small frigate.
Okay.
Which is like a small destroyer, which is like a small cruiser, which is like a really small aircraft carrier.
Okay.
So we're not talking about not talking about a capital ship here.
Gotcha.
But it's large enough to hold a helicopter.
Okay.
And so, it's nice that they conducted this little show the flag thing, but that's not exactly a major naval deployment by Russians or anybody's standards.
Yeah. And China remains kind of transactional here.
Yeah, China, we see them flying some military equipment in there, but China's not going to make a major investment into a losing proposition.
Yeah. So when we talk about key indicators here, what are we watching for?
So as far as the talks go, does Iran agree to export the 60% enriched material? Does the U.S. back down from its zero enrichment demands?
Yeah.
Do the missile discussions enter or go away? That's kind of the big thing, because one of the key variables is Israel has said if they are not included in the deal, we will strike, and Trump has basically told Israel, if we don't have an agreement, you can strike.
Yeah.
So that's important. There's always that third variable.
Yep.
Along with that, does Israel escalate public strike signaling? In other words, what is their rhetoric like as we go forward? Last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu made a very short notice visit to President Trump before the next round of negotiations, just to reiterate that missile concern.
Yeah.
And President Trump has held firm since then.
Yeah.
The U.S. and Israel are very much along the same lines on that particular issue.
Yeah.
And finally, is the deadline extended? Are we going to hold fast to the March 1st deadline, or if there's significant progress, will that deadline be extended? So those are the indicators that are going to tell us whether this dance is either coming to a head or whether it's going to continue for a little while longer.
So as we've established, this isn't really about rhetoric, it's about leverage.
That's right. It's about whether either side believes the other is willing to act.
Yeah.
If Iran thinks Washington is bluffing, it will hold firm. And if Washington thinks Iran cannot compromise, pressure will increase. Now, March 1st is not symbolic. There's no guarantee and probably an unlikelihood that will be extended. It's a decision point.
So when posture and diplomacy converge, choices narrow.
When strategic options become fewer and the stakes get higher, actors tend to move toward decisive outcomes.
Cool. Can I ask a silly question?
Of course. There are no silly questions, only silly people who ask questions.
So we talk about one of the stipulations here is that we've got this 60% enriched uranium. It is currently in Iran. The U.S. has said this is a non-negotiable. We want this stuff out. Are there people like raising their hands like we want it, or there is just a random place that we're going to go dump this? What happens to it?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's actually raising their hand saying, yeah, give me your 60% rich uranium. But I believe Turkey and Russia have been named as possible destinations for this wonderful motherlode of toxic waste.
Yeah, that doesn't do any good for anybody else, or you pour bleach in it and all of a sudden it's spoiled. How is is it just sit in bins until someone goes, I'm ready to go and enrich that uranium now?
I think you give it a half-life of a few 100,000 years.
Wow.
Put it next to the 49ers practice facility so they can continue to get injuries, and we're good.
Yeah. All right. So what we've learned here is that when posture and diplomacy converge, choices really narrow.
That's right. And I think over the next 10 days, we're going to start seeing things accelerate rapidly.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Threat and Theory. We'll see you next time.